Welcome, everyone. Thank you all for joining us today. I am Gershom Margolis. I am the founder of Imperial Advisory. We are a fractional CFO firm. We provide, I think we got to change our description, right? We're now doing interim CFO as well. We're starting to work on those more. So we're a CFO firm and we do fractional CFO work as well as, like I said, we're starting to do interim. And we work, when a CFO walks out and they need someone in days, not months, that's us. When the CEO is tired of being their own CFO, they call us. And we also work with full-time CFOs who need help with things. Anyway, um, I'm glad to be here. We've got an amazing team. And I'm pleased to have several people from our team on the call here. So I'm just going to start by welcoming them. Welcome. Starting with Tony. Thank you for putting this whole thing together. Tony is our marketing person. And welcome Dean, Marty, Stephanie, Tom. And we're going to also welcome Buddy Blattner, who is one of our former CFOs who comes every once in a while. Great to have you back. He also is an
Thank you.
author. He just sent me his newest book, which I have not read yet, but I do very much appreciate. So thank you. Anyway, so I mentioned we're a CFO firm. We work on finance, and we end up becoming an advisor quite often to our clients. But there's a lot of things that we're not experts at. And so we love having this webinar series where we sometimes speak about topics that relate directly to what we do, but sometimes there's other topics on the periphery. And so we're very pleased have to have a talk today on high net worth business succession planning. We have three speakers who all come from the same firm, and they're going to be educating us on what they do best. And they're involved in a variety of personal planning things, but there's also business aspects. And so we're very pleased to have Hank, Nick, and Tom. And I think Hank is going to kick it off. So give us a little bit of a background on you and the firm, and then we're looking forward to
Sure.
learning a lot.
Sure. Gershon, first, thank you, Tom and Tony, for putting this together and giving us an opportunity to speak here before the people you represent and help. We aspire today to deliver a message that will be useful for the people who are attending the meeting, and I want to welcome and thank you all for taking some time out of your busy schedules to hear what we have to say. So, who is Strategic Planning Associates? What is this firm? So basically, we're a firm of 16 team members. Three of those team members are partner owners. Two of them are in this meeting, myself and Nick. Then when we talk about what's the background of the firm? It started with me 40 years plus ago. And collectively, when we think about the team, there's 200 years of financial experience, again, spanning 4 decades. And the planners and advisors on the team hold 37 designations. And I know this probably doesn't mean a whole lot other than it means that we've studied a lot to be able to advise and work with our clients. And it's important to mention that we act as fiduciaries to the clients we serve. I think that's a buzzword these days that needs to be out there. But in terms of a firm, we're a boutique firm. And I'm going to introduce both Nick and Thomas so that you kind of get a sense of our background and myself. But we're a boutique firm that really offers customized planning, investment management services, and wealth management solutions. And so I'm not going to get into each of those areas. We're going to really focus on business succession planning today, which is the topic at hand. So first, I'll just introduce Nick. Nick is a partner at Strategic Planning. He's a senior wealth advisor with 25 years experience, and he's a part owner of the firm. It's important that I state that Nick is part of my succession plan, and that we are a business and that we've had to go through the process of building a succession plan in the interest of taking care of the clients and families of the clients we serve. He specializes and focuses on tailored succession planning, protecting key people of businesses, and he is also very involved in building benefit plans to retain and reward the key people who are typically the successors to many of the clients who are building a succession plan. Thomas is a highly skilled wealth advisor who has a concentrated concentrated experience in benefit plans, particularly retirement plans for business owners. And so a lot of times diversifying private equity through retirement plans is important to business owners. And I'm, obviously the most senior person here. You can tell by the color of my hair. Um, but I am a wealth advisor. I'm a part owner in strategic planning. And I tend to focus on clients who are approaching and entering or transitioning into the non-working years, and they are executing a succession plan that's been built, right? Although I'll assist in the building of it, I'm usually there to make sure it gets done right in the transition. So that's our background. I'm going to just move on. We'll move on to the next thing here, and we'll just talk a little bit about the question, will your business endure without you? And this is a question that I think if a business owner wakes up in the middle of the night, this is probably one of the questions they're asking themselves, right? What would happen if I wasn't here? Um, and and what would happen if I transitioned into retirement from my business, right? These are the kind of things that, being a business owner, I've woken up to that question. So, you're investing some time to hear our thoughts on this. I want to talk about the fact of the nature of being a business owner, and this is not new to anybody who is successful as a business owner, and probably all that are on this in this meeting, right? Running and managing a business is challenging. There are a lot of things impacting you as a CEO, owner, COO of a business. Things like retaining key people, protecting intellectual property. The concept of am I working? How do I work on my business rather than just in it? Right? The demands are extraordinary, and part of the hard part is probably the most significant planning or transition that occurs is the one from being an owner operator of a business to one where you are retiring from that business or you are executing a succession plan. And so there's never enough time to think about that as a business owner. It's very hard to do that. And so what we know is the balance, that the challenges require time in thinking about how this would play out. And it is really hard to get off that treadmill called life and being a business operator. And that's part of the role that as advisors we serve, because it has to start with goals, vision, right, that are driven by values, right? So we'll just talk a little bit about, Thomas, if you can just move to the next. Here we go. Why is it on your mind? Well, for some of you, it's on your mind because you know that you need to diversify, right? Most of your net worth is tied up in private equity or business related real estate, and so the idea of having liquidity and resources that are not strictly tied to those kind of assets is very important. It provides flexibility. For some of you, it's about managing risk and not relying on the next generation of owners or managers or key people for your financial independence, right? It's understanding that a lot of times business transitions occur with financing, owner financing, And so preparing a plan to protect against the kind of risks that come with that is very important. For others, it's about building or leaving an enduring firm, a firm that will retain employee relationships, provide them with security and independence, and make sure that the customers and people that rely on that business will continue to get the kind of service and delivery that they've always gotten. Um, I think for a lot of business owners, succession is about financial independence and financial security. And transitioning a business successfully leads to that important outcome, maybe a more balanced life, right? These are the kind of things that I think are on the minds of business owners. And identifying what your goals are is upfront allows you to tailor or allows you to work with either tailor or work with an advisory team to help you build the right succession plan for yourself. So Thomas is going to talk a little bit about some statistics which might be relevant to the group that is attending the seminar.
So Thomas, I just messaged him. I think his computer may have had some difficulties. Hold on.
So Hank, maybe while we're figuring that out, what do you think is the biggest point that the executive or owner is missing as they're trying to figure out their exit planning?
Well, I mean that there's a few answers to that, but the biggest point probably is start early. Start thinking about your vision and your goals and identify what it is, how your transition, how you would like your transition to play out. I think it all starts with being clear on what your values are and how and developing a vision for the transition of your business, whether it be to family members that are in the business, whether it be a sale through a private equity channel, or whether it is a sale to a friendly competitor or an internal sale to a set of employees. Maybe like you would see maybe an ESOP or something along those lines, right? These are all different ways to create succession, but it has to start early. So I started my succession plan thinking about it more than 14 years ago. And it's important to say that I failed twice, right? Twice. The first party I selected to be a part of the succession plan did not work out. And 5 years went by where I had no succession plan in place. So I would say that start early and really think about what your um, what your succession plan would look like if it reflected your values and create a vision for it. So Thomas, are you on board with us? I think those stats are important for the team to know. A lot of people don't understand just how important this is and how many times you fail
So I
in
have
that
a quick question.
process.
I'd like to add to that. I'd like to add to that answer, but who's responsible right now for the Zoom? Because I would like to share the slide. I have access to the slide, but it's not
Oh,
allowing me the up.
You
Thomas
sh
was the driver, so we
you
have a
should
little
be
bit of a.
able you should be able to
I
share
can.
now. Give it another try,
I
Nick.
can shoot. Oh, there you go. There you go. Okay, great. So let me just go here. Can you guys see? Do you see the statistics here?
There we
So,
go.
okay, so Dean, you asked a question. You know, as Hank is saying, starting early makes sense, but sometimes the idea of thinking about succession plan is the thing that most clients are thinking about it as well, because there's the statistics and some scary numbers here, right? 84% of business owners have a strong emotional attachment to their business. They're thinking about their business all the time, right? 65% of the owners fear that without them, their business will falter. There's just some very interesting statistics. So there's a sense of nervousness and a sense of internal, I like to call it internal dialogue. And what's an example of internal dialogue? We all drive our cars now and then again, whether it's commuting to the office or going to visit a family member, and sometimes the music or a podcast is on, but then our mind wanders. And when our mind wanders, that is that internal dialogue. And as a business owner personally, I'm not necessarily consumed, but I'm constantly thinking about the business. And even though I'm 46 years old, I do think about succession planning because, as Hank mentioned, it's about vision. Where is the business going to go? And that is primarily what's of top of mind. Now, when Hank and I met, so I approached Hank because there was a client who was approaching retirement, and in the financial planning space, it was not my skill set at that time. I just didn't even know anything about it. So I approached Hank to work with me to help this client plan for his retirement. He also was a business owner that was in the process of selling a business. The reason why I mention this is that Hank was thinking in his mind somewhat about succession planning. Again, he said he had failed twice before that, but he was thinking how he's going to grasp that. And at that time, I was not really thinking about where the business was going to go. But the fortunate thing is that we were in a car commuting to Jersey to meet the client. And at that time, it was a 5 hour day stuck in traffic and was not really appreciated at that time. But in retrospect, it was the greatest time that we had together because we just had open dialogue just to talk about where the business was going to go, the vision for the business. And that was the catalyst. So one of the things that I would strongly recommend you guys, as you represent your clients and business owners themselves, is that if you're just thinking about succession planning and you have an idea of someone that you would like to talk to about it, you don't have to get into specifics. You could just have an outside meeting outside of the business walls and just talk about, hey, how do we see this business? What do we see this business doing? Or how do we see the industry going 10, 15, 20 years? It is amazing the conversation that comes from that. And that to me was the most powerful catalyst for our merger, is the beginning of that type of conversation. So does that answer your question, Dean?
Yeah. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So let's just talk about something here, right? So what's holding business owners back, right? So you guys, for your clients or for business owners, a lot of these things can resonate, right? Where am I going to find the client? Where am I going to find the candidate? Does this candidate have critical knowledge of the business, right? After you find the candidate and they have critical knowledge, can they be suitable for a successor, right? Because it's just because someone knows how to do it doesn't mean that they're the right fit. Hank will talk about right fit in the future, but right fit is not just knowledge, it's also financials, it's also philosophy, it's also values. There's just a lot of elements of that, right? Do they have the right traits? Unfortunately, even now, it feels like there isn't enough time to talk about this stuff, but there is time. You just have to be conscious of it a little bit, right? So this next slide is really interesting. So we teamed up with Forbes. Forbes interviewed about 220 candidates of business owners of different net worths. And you'll see on the net worth of respondents, you'll see that it's a pretty even distribution. Obviously, the ones that have a net worth of 10 million or more, they represent 11%, but everything else is pretty evenly distributed. So whether you are a relatively starting business owner or someone that's more established, it seems to be that the recurring theme, the anxiety, the question marks are consistent. That's what's something that we found pretty interesting as we went through this exercise. Back to you, Hank.
Quick question.
Yeah.
Sure.
Do you think that the reason that people were concerned and all that is because they were smaller and they just hadn't gotten around to it yet? Are larger businesses inherently less concerned, or do they, like, at a certain point you deal with it and that's why?
There's a
No.
classic, if I could answer this one, Hank, and
Sure. Go ahead,
you
Nick.
can add to it, Hank. There's
Yep.
a classic saying that heavy is the head that wears the crown. And as the crown gets bigger and bigger and bigger, it gets much more complex. I have found that as business owners get more successful and as they get much larger, they value a safe place and a quiet place and a confidential place to vet their concerns. They actually have more concerns than, let's say, a starting business owner, right? The starting business owner, you know, it's interesting the use of time. Time evolves, right? So a starting business owner may not have a lot of time in the beginning because they're just caught in the weeds. They're paying payroll. They're living possibly one payroll to the next. But they're still thinking about things and they're just running. The future, the more established business owner may not feel like they have a lot of time either because they're managing employees, they're making big decisions, they're doing strategic vision, right? But it just requires a commitment. It's the first step.
Yeah,
That
I will.
and
Sorry, go ahead, Nick.
no, go ahead. I was going to say, Hank, if you want to add.
Yeah, I would echo that. When you're in the developmental phase of a business, you're putting out fires and you're you're in survival mode, right? You're laying down roots, and um, as a business matures, this is from personal experience and from working with a great many clients who are in this more mature phase. As a business matures, it becomes more about how do I gain access to the tremendous investment in time, energy, and money that I've made in this business, and how do I protect it? And how do I transition it? And how do I protect it from things like taxes, transfer taxes, and a variety of taxes and risks that are associated with that more mature business value, if you will, owner and value. So I think to Nick's point, there's always concerns, but they're very different. And I would say the larger business owner has has a lot of sleepless nights thinking about those kind of things. Um, and the bigger you are, the more discreet and the more careful you have to be because they're employees. Many of them, some are key employees that um, you have to be concerned about them knowing that there's a succession plan in the works, right? If they're not part of it, right? Those are the kind of things that make it very challenging for a larger business owner to plan out a succession strategy. So, yeah, Nick hit that nail right on the head. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about some of the benefits here. Why now, right? So first of all, there's no better time than now to plan for the succession of your business. If you haven't, and I would guess that whoever's attending the meeting here is here because this is on their mind, right? So I would encourage everybody to really start the process, right? If you haven't really, what tends to happen along the way is you have moments where you think about it, right? Episodic conversations with yourself. But to do this, to really get traction, you need to be able to carve out the time that's necessary to engage in a lot of thought, right? And identify the right path. And I alluded to that before, but I will tell you that there's some immediate benefits to doing that, right? One, you get clarity that's necessary to address questions that may come along as you mature in the business cycle, right? It's pretty obvious to the clients we serve that I have gray hair. And they ask me questions, right? They ask me things like, what's your plan? How long are you going to be here? Right? Those are questions about succession, right? And concern about succession. And being able to say, this is my plan. And this is right. So speaking for myself, I don't plan to retire. I plan to phase down. I plan to retain an interest in my business, but transition much of the daily decisions and even significant decisions to Nick and my other partner. But I plan to be of value to the business until they tell me otherwise. I plan to be there because I enjoy the work I do, right? And we have a solid succession plan, and I've been selling equity to my two partners, right? And so this is the kind of thing that took 10 years. Nick and I merged in 2019. At that time, the firm custodied and advised to $250 million in our clients' assets. Today, we're approaching $1 billion. one of the immediate benefits of succession was we're better together, right? We're, having a succession plan has enabled us, and this is not for everybody who may be listening to this, but having in this case, and for those that have a potential internal succession plan, the impact of developing that, if they're the right parties, can be enormous, right? They will run as hard as you did when you started your business, right? And so these are some of the benefits that are there, right? Succession plan can be powerful talent retention tool. It helps you avoid conflicts down the road. It allows you to answer questions very confidently about where your business is going, and that probably will have an impact on suppliers and customers who are maybe making very sizable commitments to your firm and to the product or service you deliver. It mentions here you can build predictability into your family's financial plan, right? One of the things that we're very conscious of that is that business owners, their entire world, often their financial world and personal pursuits are tied to a successful succession plan for their business interest. And understanding what their personal plan is and their personal vision and what it is how they would like to live their life and what it will take to do that also informs them of what the right strategy might be. So the question is how to do it, right? And we have a firm, a process, and I think this process is the right process. And I think that if you follow a process like this, it's likely that it will lead you to a structured plan that is unique to your situation. But we've talked about identifying your goals, right? Values, vision, and goals, right? That's the first step. Being clear on where you want to go enables you to build a plan that is based on that. And we call that discovery, right? So that in our process is the discovery process. And that leads to the next step, which is to build the plan. And in order to do that, there's planning and analysis that has to be done, and a considerable amount of it in this case. And then typically it involves a team, right? So tax counsel, tax advisors, legal counselors, right? Your corporate attorney, right? There's typically legal documents that evidence a well-built succession plan. There's valuation that's necessary depending on the type of succession plan, the path you take for succession. And so all of this we would call planning and analysis that leads to recommendations and implementation, right? And that eventually becomes the plan. And part of that plan is to manage risk, right? So there are risks that threaten every succession plan, right? The death of a key person, the loss of a profit center, external competition, staying on top of how AI may affect the industry and the business you're in. These are all things that probably come into play and need to be handicapped on some level to build a strong succession plan that can be followed. And then it's not one and done, because this should be started as quickly as possible with an eye towards the end, which means there's going to be some review and some monitoring and maintenance and updating. So this is the process. And for those of you that are highly disciplined and extremely organized and are willing to spend the time, you now have the process laid out in front of you, right? And I say this a little bit tongue in cheek, and I hope it doesn't come across too much like a sales pitch, but if you are a pilot with this process, you can follow the process and get to the outcome. But word of caution, because I've seen this in the 40 years I've been doing this a lot. If you're not a pilot and you try to fly the plane, you can crash, right? And even if you are a pilot, I crashed twice, right? So I would say that for most, getting off that treadmill I alluded to before and having someone to pilot the process that has been through it before, has seen the blind spots, is incredibly valuable with an asset that's so important to probably everyone who's on this webinar, that is a business owner. So I'll yeah, let's just, we can move forward. Yeah, there we go. So your goals, right? So here are the questions you want to ask yourself, right? When do I intend or want, or maybe want to be in a position to leave the business, right? When do I want to transition ownership control? Eventually you will, right? Because none of us get out of here alive, right? We haven't figured that out yet. So having an idea of when you want to do that gives you at least visibility around a target, right? And you can't hit a target with an arrow if you can't see it. So that's where it starts, right? And then you start asking, okay, what are my next steps given the approach I'm going to take? If it's an internal succession plan, I need to assess my talent. I need to assess their capability of stepping into the roles. There's probably some professional help you need to do that, right? Not, and I'm saying outside of a firm like ours, but you really want to take that very seriously if you have a business of real value. What's the business worth? And what is it worth in terms of the succession plan you want to pursue? Like the sale of equity to my partners is very different than the sale of equity to an outside party, right? I would look at that very differently. They're helping me build a business, right? As long as I can meet my personal goals, I'm going to I'm going to have a different approach because I want them to succeed, especially if I have an interest in making sure it's an enduring business, right? What's it worth? And sometimes worth can be something that takes on two looks, right? Nick will talk more about that in a minute. Who will take over the business? Who are my successors, or who is my successor? And how much do I need personally to be able to pursue the life I want to live when the business is no longer the key asset or is no longer an asset, right? These are the questions I would ask you to consider. Part of our process to make sure you answer those questions and review your answers over and over again. Nick, I'll turn it over to you to talk a little bit about.
Yeah, Thomas is back.
Yep, I'm back. So I'm going to keep my camera off just in case I go down again. But this is a great page. So when it comes to building a plan, there are clearly trade-offs for every single option. Leaving it to a family member, for example, it helps the family and keeps you involved to a certain extent. Of course, it may be difficult to divide it evenly and equitably, which could lead to some conflict, as we know. Or perhaps what happens if a family member just isn't interested? How do you do it then? A co-owner understands the business, but that person may lack liquidity to buy out their share of the business, right? How do you offer an avenue for them to still buy into the business? Once you know who will take over and how it gets done is where the rubber truly meets the road.
Makes no difference. I can take a message from.
We need a mute. There we go.
Gotcha.
Thank you.
Right. So the whole idea of this page is that the goal drives the strategy, and there's a different combination of goals that you could use as well. As business owners, we tend to be pretty optimistic, right? You've heard of the optimistic bias. In general, it states that humans have a tendency to think that bad things will never happen to them and that it will only happen to other people, thinking that you have a better chance than the rest of the population. That is a glass half full optimism, right? And that makes sense. It's hard to take risks and build a business unless you could see the upside, even in difficult situations. But the odds of experiencing difficulties are the same for all of us. And what's also true is no one can predict when or if they'll happen. Nick, you can click the next page if you don't mind.
Yeah.
So a great succession plan accounts for all of these contingencies, right? It accounts for what is unexpected. And That may be incorporating things like key person disability insurance or buy-sell agreements that strategically to ensure a smooth transition in case what if situations occur. In the event one does occur, you or your heirs will be ready. It'll be one less thing to worry about, and it takes the emotion aspect out of it. Over to you, Nick.
So valuation, right? So I kind of want to jump off that prior question about beginning business owners and more established business owners. So typically, most of us have a maturing that happens naturally, right? In our 20s, we're thinking about things. 30s, we're thinking about different things. 40, even more different things, right? So, for example, most starting business owners, even if they're in their 20s and their 30s, they're living life one decision at a time, right? So they have to pay their car bills. Maybe they get married and have children. They have to set up an education account. Maybe they have to buy life insurance. They're just reacting to what's happening in their life. And that's a normal process, but they don't have enough time to think about higher, more complex questions, right? And then maybe in their 40s and their 50s and their 60s, when they're more established, these things have been all paid or getting continually to be paid, but now they're starting to ask themselves, will my business endure? How will I be remembered? How will my children remember me? Those are much more complex questions that have multiple layers of feelings, feelings and emotions, financials, stuff like that. So valuation, how do I tie valuation to this? Because somewhere in that transition from the starting professional to the more established professional, I don't know where that line is, but somewhere within there, when we meet those professionals in this, let's call it the gray area or that transitionary area, when we're speaking with business owners and they're planning, let's say, for retirement, getting some clarity, most of the questions that I get is, I want to know, what does it take for me to maintain my standard of living, assuming my business is worth zero? They value the business zero because they're saying, I don't know if this business is going to endure. I haven't even thought about that. Right now, I'm just eating hand to mouth. And I just want to make sure everything's taken care of. So let's assume that's worth zero. What do I need to do? What do I need to invest? Where do I need to invest it in that type of stuff? Eventually, there comes a time where the business is there. It's permanent, or more likely permanent. And it almost feels like a family member, right? It's a family member, or in this case, maybe a child that they love so much because they've been together since the beginning. So valuation is very interesting. So in the beginning stages here, sometimes you want to minimize the value of the business. First of all, there's a financial reason. For the IRS, for gifting purposes, you want it to be as low as possible, right? For tax purposes, you want it to be as low as possible. But if I'm selling to a third party, I want that to be as high as possible. Those are financial things. But from a planning standpoint, they're also vary in terms of the time frame and also specifically in terms of the life cycle that the client is in. So if someone is in their, let's say, 50s and 60s on the later end of their business cycle, valuing the business higher is probably worthwhile because they're sitting on a nest egg, and maybe that nest egg is enough for them or not. But there's different reasons why you want to do this. So we have, again, because we're personally through this cycles ourselves, we have some know-how and understanding. What is the client really asking, right? How to properly value this business. So say we build a plan, we build a personal financial plan that's tied to a business succession plan. The key here is obviously goals. Goals will change. Family situations will change all the time. As kids marry, right, and have children, there's good and bad. There's complication. Things change. Employees don't always stay. Management changes. Business valuations change. So a key aspect of business succession planning, personal financial planning, business planning is the verb planning. It's constant. It has to always be updated. So we're going to leave you guys with some questions, but ultimately here is the last piece is why, strategic planning associates. So in a nutshell, right, we're experienced pilots for those that can see they are not. We will help you get to your destination safely and securely, which is something everyone wants from a plane ride. Thank you for your time.
We're open to any questions anyone might have.
I have a comment. Firstly, thank you very much. Thank you for joining us. Very interesting. That wasn't my main comment. I have a different comment that relates to what you were saying, which is Warren Buffett is like this famous investor guy, richest person in the world, all that good stuff. But he also has a succession plan that kind of blew up in his face
Yes.
spectacularly 5 or 7 years ago.
Yes.
And it took him till like 93 or whatever he is to retire.
Yeah,
So you're in good company.
That's a great point. And it wasn't his only succession plan. But yeah, that's a great point. Yep. It takes time, energy, and thought. I mentioned that earlier. And this for the business owner that's dedicated themselves to building a business is the most important asset they have in many cases, right? When I say financial asset, right? Obviously health and family are bigger, more important assets for many. But in terms of a financial asset, most business owners have poured and concentrated their effort building equity in a business at great expense, and that's where their assets are. And the process of getting that return that's there out and using it is requires time, energy, and thought. So that's the main point I would make. Someone asked earlier, I forget who it was, what is the one thing you would tell them to do? I would say get started. Get started with the process that you just saw.
Uh, do you recommend that people do what you did, which is start selling and sell it slowly, as opposed to selling the whole thing or selling a big chunk and taking a step back?
Well, in the right fact pattern, yes. So the key that makes that attractive to me is I don't want to retire, right? I envision that my interest in this business. So for 40 years, for 35 years, let's call it, professional activity was the dominant activity, as it is for most business owners, right? It is a dominant activity in your life. And 60 to 80 hours a week for 25 years and 60 to 70 hours a week for another 10 years. And then we start looking at, okay, I got to slow this thing down, right? I got to start living life a little bit. My family's paid a pretty big price along the way. That kind of thing I think is very typical for business owners, right? And so for me, the fact that I love what I do and I don't want to be out of it, it's not a wholesale transition anywhere, makes it very appropriate to have a succession plan where for both the successors and I, the transition is in bite-sized chunks that can make it very easy for the successors and accommodate the need that I have to get value for all of that commitment that I've had over the years, right? But I think in different scenarios, it's different, right? So if I'm selling to a friendly competitor, yeah, I want to make sure that the deal is fair and that it's going to work. I don't want a business back that's been destroyed or compromised, right? And then the plan looks different, right? There's probably some form of employment contract to make sure the succession is smooth. There's going to be a different financial arrangement, and there's going to be it's going to look different. For the person who's going through a private equity channel, we have several clients that have and are. That's a very different channel, right? And it is a incredible negotiating process that involves a lot of due diligence, right, on both sides. So it just depends on what the scenario is, right? It depends on what the goals and the vision is, right? My son is the third partner here, right? He's 32 years old. He's 15 years younger than Nick. right? So Nick will be counting on my son for succession, and there'll probably be several more partners in the years to come because the firm is growing. And it's not going to be easy for one person to be the successor, right? As it is, two are probably struggling a little bit with this partner that's moving towards a more balanced life where professional activity is one activity among a few, right? That's the right. That's my plan and our plan, but that's not necessarily going to be everybody's plan, right? So when the fact pattern presents itself like that, yeah, it makes a ton of sense to do it that way.
Okay.
At least it did for us.
Hank, I've got a couple questions as consulting business. I take it that succession planning is an element of your business offering as a firm, and that
It is.
you have provided that consulting to clients.
Yes.
Okay. Next, I would say that to what extent does the wealth management aspect of your firm present a channel for you to source those clients that are interested in succession planning? Because it would seem to me that succession planning, to be selected by a client, you have to have a level of trust that is average, beyond average in terms of business relationship.
I'm sorry. I don't have your name is not on the screen. I want to make sure I'm not.
That's Tom.
Tom.
Yeah.
Sorry, Tom. I didn't see it. So, Tom, this is a set of great questions, right? Yes. The answer is, it's very uncomfortable for a business owner to, for lack of a better way to put it, undress, right, and talk about their business in the kind of depth they have to build a solid succession plan, because it gets into real values and vision and those kind of things. So I would say, yeah, but if you don't have that relationship, you have to build it.
Yeah, well, that takes time.
And that takes time. And so you got to start somewhere. For the clients that I've had, for 30 years, and we've helped them, for a client who's maturing, who's in the earlier phases of their business development, we advise and encourage them to siphon off a small part of their profit every year, right, to make sure that they're not exclusively depending on private equity transition as a means to financial independence, right? And for those clients, that they already have that relationship. But it's the client who doesn't have that relationship, who maybe has existed. We need a mute. Sorry, yeah, I'm not sure where that was, but for the client who's doesn't have that relationship and maybe has operated in a world of brokerage where they have a lot, this happens a lot. We get clients where they come in and they've got an insurance broker, they've got an investment advisor or broker, and they've got a tax advisor, and they've all operated independently, impacting the client, and not operated as a team, right? And one hand doesn't know what the other one's doing. That client is in an uncomfortable position because they don't have a quarterback. They don't have someone who's going to pull that team together in their best interests and help them plan out the most important transition of their lives, right? So I'm not sure if I answered your question, but I hopefully did.
Obviously, wealth management is a channel and a way to develop that trust. Now, if that weren't in place, clients that don't have a board of directors or outside advisors that keep them independent, that could be a vehicle also helping a client to establish that level of objectivity about the business, might be another vehicle.
Sure, absolutely. If the business is established enough to have a board and typically key advisors are on that board, right? And there's sort of an existing process in place. They may not have the expertise, but then you're inviting an advisor probably into that team who can supply that expertise, or should, right? And the trust lies in the existing advisors to vet and make sure that's the right person.
So Tom, if I can just add, I think this comment was said, but in case it was not, there's an old saying that says you want to say separate personal from business matters. But as business owners, they're one of the same. And so to your point is that if we're developing a relationship with a business owner over 10, 20, 30 years, obviously that relationship and that trust level is there because we've been managing all their other wealth outside of their business. So it's a natural transition. So if you're on a board of directors or you're a confidant or you're a trusted advisor, introducing someone that's on the wealth management side to help with personal matters for a business owner is a very, very good and prudent step because those relationships take time. It's very rare, very rare. It happens, but it's very rare if someone sells a business and then looks for a wealth advisor. It does happen, but it's rare. And in reality, at that level, at that stage, skepticism, a lot of things are already there. And that wall starts building higher and higher and higher. The only way that wall does not build up as high is that if, let's say, that person who sold the business has a very close friend or has someone that maybe has a wealth advisor, and then that comes through a referral and says, hey, who have you been working with? Oh, I've been working with this person for decades. That alleviates some of that concern. Did I explain that well?
Yeah, I would, another dimension in my experience, it's one thing to have this kind of objective planning done in a business. Think about significant nonprofits and how difficult the succession transition planning is for significant nonprofits. And you have nonprofits that have a lot of assets and a lot of reach, and they tend to have even a more difficult time of separating the individual who's leading from the objective requirements of succession planning.
Yeah, this is where your board concept becomes very important, right? And yeah, so I will say, just circling back to what Nick just said, I have had a number of clients that have gone through significant liquidity events, and these clients, some of them have come to us through introductions from accounting firms or other advisors who in some cases do sit on that board, right? And the interesting thing is in every situation like that, with the exception of one or two, if they didn't have that relationship beforehand and trust in that relationship, what they wind up with is three relationships. And that is very challenging for the client, right? Because you have three chefs in the kitchen and only one can be the head chef, right? Otherwise the client's world it becomes a struggle, right? So those are the kind of things that, yeah, I mean, look, if you start on the track to succession planning, you probably also want to select an advisor to work with through that process, because when you get to that transition, you're really going to want an organized transition process that's been well thought out and is tailored to meet your personal goals. And that's where wealth management and business succession planning intersect. Yep. I didn't bother to offer the chat room. I apologize. I should have, because then people could have just put questions in there. But if there's anybody who has questions that they'd like to ask, this is the last couple of minutes here, I think, to do that. Okay, so I'd like to thank you, Gershon, for you, Tony, and anyone else who helped put this together on your side. We thank you for the opportunity to speak to you, and look forward to maybe doing that again if you'll have us back.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for all your insights and sharing some of your own experiences as well. If anyone needs to get in touch with Hank or the rest of the team at Strategic Planning Associates, be in touch with myself or Tony. Webinar next month. Tony tells me it's going to be on budgeting, so stay tuned for that. It's an important part of evaluation is coming up with what that plan is and maybe following it too. Probably
Absolutely.
part of it. Anyway, thank you all.
You're
and
welcome.
have a great day.
Thanks for
Take
having
care,
us.
Gershon.
Take care.
Thanks so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Yeah,
Bye-bye.
guys, thank you.